Welcome. All right. Great to see a full crowd. I'm S.C. Moati. I'm the founder of Products That Count. I'm also the author of this book, Mobilized, which is a book about the business of mobile and how to build great mobile products. I encourage you to check it out. If you ask great questions tonight, you might win one. And I'll be signing also some copies at the end of the talk, if you are eager to get a future special item. So tonight's talk is one of a series of talks that we have every month. What makes these talks unique is that every time our speaker presents something that they have never shared before. And when I started, asking speakers to do that, some of them were reluctant. Well, I have some great content, so I'll add a little something. And then the last few speakers have all created talks from scratch, like 100%. So tonight we have another one of these where Aparna has created a talk on, what it takes to build trustworthy AI products. And I'm very excited to hear about that. But, if you want to come to our talks, I'll talk about next month's talk, after tonight. But it's also 100% brand new content. So, this would not be possible, without the support of Yelp, who was with us from day one when we started hosting these events here, 2.5 years ago. Yelp makes the event possible because they offer their beautiful space. They offer the beer, the pizza. So I really want to thank them. Usually we have someone from Yelp who says basically that they're hiring, especially engineers. So if you want to talk to them about working there, it's a fantastic place to work at, and a lot of people who work there have been there for a really long time because they love it. There's a crew at the back, just under the Yelp sign over there, that can answer all your questions. All right. So, tonight I want to welcome Aparna. I met Aparna recently, and then when we started talking about, what would she talk about, there were about like 4 or 5 different topics. And I was like, I don't know what to pick. They're so great, right? So we picked a hot topic, artificial intelligence. And I think her angle is fantastic. Like, how do you build, products that are trustworthy yet use artificial intelligence, because it's kind of scary to think that, the Matrix and Big Brother are going to be after us. Anyway, so I'm very, very excited to welcome her. Are you coming from over there, Aparna? Yes. Welcome.
So I want to preface this talk by saying a couple things. One is super excited to be here. I think these years are proof that you can't live without the device. Really excited to be here. I want to preface it with a couple things. One is really these are observations, not these directive prescriptions. I just thought it would be interesting to share some lessons, observations, both from products I worked on at Google, but also actually more importantly looking at other products both within Google and folks who have worked on products elsewhere. The space is really early, and there's a lot of hype and excitement around the space of data and intelligence and so on. And there's a lot more products and action in the space. So I want to preface it by saying these are just a few observations just to get the brain cells going and some discussions going more than anything else. So with that low expectation bar, let me talk through a couple of observations here. So first, before I even talk about some of the examples that I've seen, why do we think it's really important to talk about how do you build data products? So I want to get a gut check from the audience. How many of you folks are building products? That's good, right audience. How many of you think are building mobile products? Okay. So I'll make this statement from the Department of Obvious, right? Which is actually mobile really changes the game here. If you think about intelligent products or data products. And it's really because of 2 reasons. So one is that on the input side, Again, like somewhat obvious, but it has profound implications. On the input side, you have 3.5 billion plus phones, with a lot more, billions of videos, trillions of pictures, lots of places, millions of places visited, and so on. So as you all are building your products, you suddenly have a lot more information and data that you can use to improve those products. So that's on the input side. It's an order of magnitude more than anything you've had to improve your product. But I think equally important is on the output side. Again, nothing, earth-shatteringly insightful here, but think about 3.5 billion plus users having access to your product, right, potentially, and access to information, and clearly mostly through their phones, but also through new devices, right? They're on the go, they're at home, they're at their kids' swimming class, as I was yesterday, and you're still accessing a lot of products, lot of new use cases. So this combination of both an order of magnitude change on the input and a big change in terms of access to your products on the output makes it really important for us to say, well, how do we think about these products in this era? Again, so it does open up new use cases. Previously, if you thought about, say, watching a movie, yes, it's an information problem, but if you said, hey, you're watching a movie with your kid on a Friday night, suddenly there's a lot more information and context there, so it becomes a data product, right? Recommending a movie becomes a data product. Same thing with navigating your route through the car in real time, right? It becomes, based on the traffic conditions, it becomes an information and data problem. Or monitoring your fitness and improving your running, if you have a watch. It becomes an information problem. So there's a few challenges, and I'll jump right into them. And if you forgot everything else in this talk, these are just monikers, and I have used them actually. Where's Essie? I have actually used this, shorthand for people to think about. These are the 3 dimensions I generally think of when we are building a data product, what are the dimensions along which, as product builders, we should be thinking about aspects, right? The first dimension, AI, but really broadly algorithms, right? It can be machine learning, but it's broadly data and algorithms. The second dimension is this interaction, the UI to your product, and how does that change based on, again, the data capabilities that your product has. And the last dimension is I, which is personalization, right? Again, personalization you can think of at multiple levels. How does the product change? How does the data change based on each person using these products? And again, to restate the obvious, all these 3 dimensions become far more important in the mobile era because each of these dimensions changes significantly. So let's talk about AI, or more broadly, intelligence that can power your product, right? And here's just a few observations, and these are drawn from examples that I've seen and worked on. The first observation is that as you are thinking about building your product and saying, hey, which part of my product can I apply intelligence or smarts? One suggestion I have is pick the low-hanging fruit. Often the low-hanging fruit are problems that are, easy for machines, but hard for people. Let me give you an example, right? I speak 1.5 languages. I speak one English well, but another Indian language reasonably well. But if you take me and put me in a country where I need to speak that language, if the alternatives I have are a machine translation tool, some say Google, which has let's say 80% accuracy, it's significantly better than what I can do, which is resort to sign language. So that problem, if you throw intelligence at that problem, even if you had an 80% accuracy, it's already that much more useful to users. Now, sometimes some problems start out to be easy for people, right? I don't know, in the 1990s, let's say you had to organize pictures of your kid from the school year. There were maybe 100 pictures. You could do it in a few hours, right? Again, with the phone, this year, I probably have 10,000 of these pictures. So suddenly you say, find all those pictures with my kid in it and organize them into an album. Becomes a problem that is better served by machines. So Google Photos does a much better job than I can do, or rather, much faster than I can do, right? So that would be one observation. As a counterexample, by the way, on this, hand-eye coordination is something that's still hard for machines, right? So if you said, hey, I'm going to build a dishwasher robot, awesome, good luck, but it's a harder problem, right? The second observation here is that, again, the systems you build, the tech that we have, is imperfect, right? So no system is perfect in machine translation or speech recognition or any of these building blocks. So often you have wins and losses, or what I call the wows and the what the hells, right? And one of the things you want to make sure is that you look at, for every wow moment that your product has, because it uses intelligence, pay equal attention to the what the hells, right? And the stakes become different depending on the domain of the problem you pick. Let's say, you're using Google search and you're looking for, hey, Donald Trump visiting Mexican president, right? And you got the first few results. They're okay, but maybe, you got a slightly less relevant article. It's a loss, right? But it's not the end of the world, right? You got a slightly less relevant article to read. But, you're a startup, you're building this, personal digital assistant at work that does amazing automatic scheduling. And then it, made a mistake in automatically scheduling a meeting with the CEO. That's a much bigger loss. What the hell, right? So, and the trust in your product becomes a lot lesser after one such event, the experience that the user has. So one observation or a suggestion here is to pay attention to that win to loss ratio in your product. And also pay attention to what's the cost of getting it wrong. The third observation I have on this intelligence aspect is, especially in machine learning based products, what you train the system with influences a lot in terms of what the system learns, right? So a simple example would be if a vision-based system has only certain types of training sets, right? In this picture, for example, if it's trained with just cat pictures, then it can incorrectly identify something as lunch because it has not seen anything like a lunch plate. An example closer for me is that a few years ago, speech recognition systems were mostly trained on US-based accents. So and mostly male. So a lot of the initial speech recognition systems performed very poorly for female voices. And then like add international, and it would and a long last name, it would never recognize my last name. Right? So I think the key point here is that as you think about building learning-based components in your products, you really need to think about what training data sets are you feeding those systems. So that's on the intelligence or the AI dimension, right? The second dimension you want to kind of think about as you're building your product is the UI. Now, one of the first observations I had when I started working on Google search was that something as simple as a spell correction, how many of you have used this or have seen this in action, where you type in something, especially on a phone, and you mistype it, and Google search offers suggestions sometimes, or sometimes just gives you the answer for what it thinks you typed, right? So one of the point here is that in this horribly mistyped word, clearly there's no real word like that, no real phrase like that. In this case, the system was confident enough that you meant Barack Obama, and it just gave you the answer, right? But in other cases where, let's say you misspelled something slightly, and there are two interpretations of your intent, it doesn't go and replace the entire thing. It says, did you mean the other thing? Like gives you the answer for what you asked for and says, hey, by the way, did you mean the other thing? Now, it's a tiny example in terms of the actual UI, but that sensibility of saying when the underlying system is confident, then the UI can be proportionally confident, right? And say, go ahead and replace it. But when it's not, when there is actually a built-in multiple interpretations, you want the UI to reflect that. So that's kind of what I mean by this. The second one was something that I experienced when I was building this product, Google Now, where there is always this tension between purely predictive magic, that is, the system just spits out an answer or gives you some suggestion to do, let's say recommend you a perfect movie, versus having some sort of a predictability or explainability. And my point here is that certain domains you can get away with just being this magic tool. So let's say you're playing a game, like, you're trying to win a game. You kind of don't care about like the explainability, but you just want to win the game and you care about the outcome, right? If the system can suggest the next move, you're fine. But it gets different when you use learning or intelligence for a system that you're trying to use, for a tool that you're trying to use. So on the right side, I have an example where we tried these experiments with launchers on Android home screen, where it predicts or it suggests the next app you're likely to use. But just imagine if and we quickly found out through user studies that even if we did a 98% accurate system in terms of predicting your next app, for the 2% cases where your muscle memory or mental model is, oh, I always find the Pokemon Go app icon here, and suddenly it's not there, it's very frustrating, right? So there's a strict trade-off in terms of what you think of in terms of magic, versus the predictability of saying, oh, there is a tool and there's a certain way that I use this tool. So even if you have these delightful moments sometimes, you may unintentionally cause frustration in the moments that you don't get it right. So the outcome there, of course, was that we modified the feature. We kept all the apps in their place, but in the Android M release, we started doing this top row of suggested apps. That is, didn't change the user's expectation and the muscle memory of like where to go when they know what they want, what app icon they want to tap on, but then added this additional bonus feature which said sometimes we predict it right and it's right there, but other times they know exactly where to go, right? And then this one is, this point is basically saying, look, in general, like database systems get better when there's good feedback loops, right? We've all seen it in our products in desktop. You have impressions, you have clicks, you optimize the hell out of every action, and the system and the product gets better for users. The point I want to call out here is that it gets harder with newer and newer interactions. So to give you an example, if you built a product that suggested a notification, right? In our case, with Google Now, we said, oh, we'll suggest if the weather becomes significantly worse, we'll tell you, hey, by the way, it's going to rain tomorrow, right? Now, let's say as a user, I saw this, I glanced at it, more importantly, I flicked the wrist and I saw this on the watch, right? And then I made sure I took my raincoat. I found it useful as a user, but the system has no way of knowing that that was useful, right? So the feedback loop gets harder as you have these lighter weight interactions with information and with computing. Another example, obviously, is voice, where if you said, hey, will it rain? And the system said, yes, it will rain tomorrow. And again, like I got what I wanted. There's no clear feedback loop, at least not as clean as the desktop world of clicks and long clicks and impressions and so on. There is no perfect answer to address this. So far, what we've found is that sometimes the best thing is to supplement it with user studies, qualitative analysis, and so on. But also see what are these other lightweight hooks you can place into the product, right? Once in a while, 1% of the users, you ask them, saying, hey, did you find this notification useful? So that's on the interaction front. The last dimension I want to talk about is personalization, or the I component, right? So one observation here is that whenever, in any of these products, whenever we've made the benefits pretty clear, as you are asking your users to say, hey, like give us this data so that we can make the product better. Whenever that benefit was really clear and immediate and tangible, it leads to success. So a simple example is in Waze. I sign up as a Waze user. Waze says, hey, like I want to know where you are. And immediately I see traffic around me. I see the alerts for traffic incidents. So the connection is very immediate and tangible for me to say, oh, of course, yeah, like Waze is saying I'm here and therefore showing me information around. This one is a more nuanced observation, and it's a hard one, which is on the face of it, what I'm trying to say here is, oh, don't just rely on these implicit feedback loops in the system to learn. Sometimes the best thing is to ask the user, right? So if you're building a recommendation system, right, you're suggesting articles for me to read. After the 10th article, I'm ignoring reading, or I'm not tapping on the 10th Donald Trump article, the system should probably get a hint that I'm not interested. But sometimes it's actually much easier to say, hey, which of these topics are you interested? The nuance here is that you also don't want the user to feel like they're filling out a tax form, right? As soon as you make it the user burden, then the product becomes heavier and like more of a tedious feature to use. Here are a couple of examples, right? There are lightweight ways that you can, again, like build user feedback. So in Google Photos, you can say, we've identified this person. Who is this person? Can you label the picture so that it becomes easier for you to, next time organize your photos? Or in Inbox, we have this feature called Smart Reply, where you have this email and we can suggest some replies. Again, based on your interaction with those suggestions, we can improve the product. So there's implicit as well as explicit ways that you can let users teach. This last point about personalization is saying, look, most of the times when we all talk about personalization as product folks, we think about data. That is saying, hey, if you have a recommendation system, how do we make sure that this data is tailored to you? But often personalization is also at a higher level, which is which problems, which products are even relevant for which audiences. So in this case, for example, if you were building a feature like this one, where we were actually building this feature in Google Now, where we said, oh, we should try and help users remember where they park the car. And through our user studies, we did find that actually in a city like Mumbai, or perhaps even New York, where most people take the train, this feature isn't that useful, right? So it can be at the which product problems you select, what data you show, and what features do you prioritize in certain markets versus not. You want to think of personalization at a much broader level than just saying, hey, you fine-tune this data to this particular user. That's basically what I wanted to share, which is building data products in general is a key problem for a lot of product folks. But I think it's become more important in the mobile age just because of the order of magnitude of inputs, order of magnitude more access to your products, and a much larger market. My suggestion is to think along 3 dimensions. One is what intelligence can you build to make parts of your product really powerful. Second is how do you make sure that the interaction is proportional to that intelligence you build. And the third is really think hard and broad about personalization. Thank you. Sure.
Where do you see...
and I'll repeat the question if...
Yeah.
So the question was, where do you see AI evolving in a few years? In 2 years, 3 years? I'm going to give you a non-answer. And I'll try to keep it real with you, which is, I think there's a lot of hype and a lot of excitement and exuberance around AI. But those of us in grad school in like a decade ago also saw this. So it's important to kind of see what are the real advances and how far you have to go still to like materially impact how we think about things. So with that, I'll say a couple things. One is there's a real progress in terms of where techniques like deep learning have actually impacted user-visible components, right? So speech recognition is the obvious one here, but computer vision is the other building block. There are other components that you traditionally think of in AI, which are, say, hand-eye coordination or reasoning. They're far off still, but there are these building blocks that you see progress in. But my sense is that you will see progress in like slower than most people are like thinking about. We'll have to, is there a mic that you can pass? Or? Yeah, I can hear you. The question is, are there projects or are there efforts you don't want to take on because of ethics and implications and so on? I think that's an issue that we're very thoughtful about. I think all the companies are thinking about. I wouldn't say, I think the way to think about this is, in a way, like you want to bake that into your whole process, ground up, versus thinking of it as an afterthought, and that's kind of what we're doing. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, the question was, how do you balance the whole implicit user inputs versus explicit user inputs? There's pros and cons, and how do you balance that? I think, again, as with many of these things, it depends on the specific product you're building. But a couple of guidelines, right? So one is, again, the cost of getting wrong is a pretty good dimension to think about. So, for example, if by taking, so every input, every time you're making the user work, it's a burden, right? So if you're imposing the tax, if you can offer a disproportionate benefit, then that's a fair trade-off, right? You're saying, hey, like, if the user can actually explicitly state their preferences or do something that will make the product disproportionately better, then that's a fair trade. But in most cases, for example, in recommendation systems or in search, right, there are many, many micro interactions that the user has with the product over time. So if for every search interaction, you made the user say, no, I like this search result, but not that search result, and this one or the other, it's not a proportionate trade-off. So that's one way of thinking about it. I think the other guideline is to say, whenever the system can actually learn, it should, right? If there are ways, if there are enough signals there that the system can figure out or use that feedback, it should, and leave the explicit inputs for things that the users are better able to express. Yeah. I'll give a short answer mostly because I actually don't work on that specific part of the effort. But the short answer here is if you look at things like TensorFlow, or if you look at like all the APIs, again, like not just from Google, from other companies, it actually is becoming easier to make use of some of these components in a much easier way than ever before, right? If you think about it, there's like a Vision API where you can use, if you're building a simple shopping app, you can actually use that today to say, oh, like, I like this purse, show me other purses like this, which wasn't that easy at all. You'd have to like hire like, easily 50 computer vision PhDs to do that before. It's a bit of both. I think there is, I think I kind of will probably repeat what I'd said earlier, which is there's some real advances in terms of the core techniques and a lot more data at scale, which is able to like improve the accuracy of many of these systems. But at the same time, I think at the end of the day, like just throwing intelligence will not turn a non-problem into a problem, right? So, for example, if you have a speech recognition system and if you build a product that uses it, but the underlying intelligence, it can't answer any question for you, then that's not really like, that's not changed by the fact that there's deep learning. So I think the first rule of like PM still applies, which is pick a problem that somebody cares about, right? There's a real user problem. Then on top of it, then the other dimension to think about is there a significant lift from like applying intelligence? That's the other aspect to think about, where again, there's this, this year, like last year it was Uber for X, and this year every startup is AI for X. But the real question is, does applying intelligence actually solve the problem in a very meaningful, different, significant way? Right? If that's not the case and you get like a 25% improvement, then maybe it may not be enough for people to even switch from previous ways that they solve the problem to this.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. No. But yeah, if I weren't excited about the space, I wouldn't come here and share these thoughts. So I think just in terms of how you think about information products, I think again, like just given the scale of number of users who can actually use information products in very, very different use cases that you did before, I think that for me, the fundamental insight is actually a very simple one, which is in the past, if you think about the max number of like PCs or your desktops, right, 100 million tops. Now you have like 3.5 billion people, and probably somewhere I read on the internet, so it must be true. It's in 2020 there'll be like 5 billion phones, right? So that sheer magnitude, by definition, opens up use cases that we've not thought of, right? In all sorts of scenarios where they carry the phone with them. So my answer is a meta one, which is there's a lot more things to come, which I will be super excited about. Yeah, so the question is typically it's AI and just even ML, machine learning, all of these things are like a computer scientist domain. Why are we talking about this as product people, right? My take is actually what I started the talk with, which is I think in many of these areas, there's almost like these 3 layers of development, right? There's the core technology advances, like in this case, for example, like deep learning is one example of core technology advances. Then there are almost these application areas that are evolving. If you think about speech recognition or just capabilities that are now possible versus not. But I think the third layer is where product comes in, which is again finding the problems where you can meaningfully apply these techniques. And I think the real good products emerge from combination of, is this a worthwhile problem? That's not going to change just because you have like underlying techniques that improve, right? You still have to pick the right problems. You still have to pick the right and meaningfully big markets, and the right business to build around it. And I guess the other thing I'd add to that is product folks and having some understanding of limitations of the system is important, because then you won't have these fantastic notions of, like I'll build this assistant or I'll build this thing that like the dishwasher robot example I gave, right? Where you will know the limitations of which building blocks are feasible in what time frame and so on. Yep. That's more precision than I was expecting. And maybe I can give you a qualitative sense of it, right? So one of the early areas I worked on in search was news, which is why I gave the example of, let's say you got a wrong, less relevant news article that you gave in response to a search query. It's not the end of the world. And to unpack that a bit, it doesn't reduce the user's attention, or it doesn't reduce the use of product by the user. So then what I observed when I started looking at local search was that, let's say you gave a wrong result. I looked up, Home Depot hours. And you said, yep, it's open. And then I sat in the car, I drove to the damn place, and it was closed. So that qualitatively, that loss, at least through our evaluations, was a more costly one, right? I can't share the exact numbers, but it was more costly in our evaluations, in how the users perceive the product and perceive the trust in that product, in the subsequent uses of the product, right? So, and then you take the other extreme, which is, you're building this, like I said, this, assistant that says, hey, time to leave for your talk. It's just going to take 42 minutes, and it takes 1 hour, 15 minutes, and you guys are waiting for 30 minutes, and that's way more costly, right? So I think that's the way qualitatively think about this, but I can't put a specific second decimal digit number on it. The question is, what are your thoughts on chatbots? That's too specific for me to comment on, but I think maybe a broader comment I can make is that if you look at again these capabilities, vision or speech recognition, natural language is hard. It's one of the harder problems. It actually, if you think about one of the principles of sharing, which is it's easy for people and harder for machines, right? You say something, and if I understand the language, it's actually easier for me. So if you look at the traditional way they measure accuracy, they take these linguists and say, okay, if you have 100 sentences, how many sentences did they understand? The accuracy is around 97% or something. And even the best of the NLP systems are around 94, and that's true in very, very domain-constrained areas. So it's a hard problem. So I think it's good that there's a lot of excitement and experimentation, but fundamentally it's a hard problem.
making.
So the question was, is there a framework and a thought process or a playbook for saying, okay, when you build a new feature, how do you look at, how you scale it to everyone and all situations, roughly, right? I'll preface it again. I don't think this is specific to Google. This is just my observation in general around how these things can get done. And still, there's no guarantee of success. Sometimes you just learn it the hard way. You put the feature out there and it turns out it's not actually a right fit, right? But in general, I think so there's a couple tools that all of you are probably familiar with, which is one is just the initial user studies. So very coarse user studies to say, hey, are we roughly even in the right ballpark, right? So that saves a lot of grief later down the lane where you're trying to fine tune the product. That's not the time to do the coarse user studies. So that helps. I think the second is just experimentation as well. The key is to use it at the right phase of the project, which is you can do the live experiments and instrumentation once you know the core basics of the product. You can't A/B test your way out of a non-problem. Right. I think we have time for maybe a couple questions. Yeah.
Excite burning, which
I'll probably give a very, we should chat offline about this, but I think the broad answer here is, again, knowledge representation is another problem where there's some advances. So if you look at this, things like Knowledge Graph in Google, there are steps toward saying, understanding things in the real world, people, places, and things. But that's one part of it, right? That's basically a very basic representation of things in a way that machines can understand. But there's all sorts of things that are, waiting to be done there. Yeah, last two, you.
Tell us more about using.
Right, and this goes to the other point. So the question is, especially when you have, products based on unsupervised learning, where again, there is even less of a, feedback loop system. I think all the things that I said hold true, which is you do want to supplement it with other qualitative ways that you can get the product to be better. And again, if you pick the right domain, that you can, it's far more effective in certain problem areas versus others. Yeah. I think the question for those of you who didn't hear is, how do I find the right ideal startup? But I'm big driven, but I think it's a really, you asked the right question, but beats me. I think it's one of those areas where, I've had my list of failures, so I can't say I've figured this out. Yeah. I think there's one more. Have you watched our Google I/O? I would point you to that. Cool. Yeah.
So
Yeah, so the question was, many of these systems, especially machine learning-based systems, are kind of black boxes, and as product folks working on these problems, do we just kind of treat them as black boxes and build on that layer of abstraction, or how do you get better intuition on what's working and what's not? That's a really good question, and one of the things I've seen work with myself and other PMs is, just having some more background knowledge, right? Even if it's as simple as going through primers on learning systems and just the basics here. But B, actually spending, depending on the domain, so if you're looking at speech recognition system, just spending time with the engineers and the folks working on this and looking at trying to understand specific error paths or specific successes and failures or capabilities, and just unpacking that a little bit more. Those two are the things that I've found useful, just to get better intuition in this space. Where are all the women?
oh, not me.
Thank you for asking that question. Sure. Yeah. I think I would replace. So the question was, what will happen to the children? But I think my sense is actually the interaction or the shift is a broader one. I think it has actually, I don't see it as AI, but as such, this access to computing, right? I don't know about you. I don't know if you have kids. I have a 7-year-old, and he's mobile native, right? In a way that I never was. So in some sense, there are a few assumptions that kids have about access to screen, access to information wherever they are. There are positives there, right? He expects that, he can, where we're driving, we're on the road trip, he expects to have connectivity everywhere, right? Which wasn't a thing. I had printed MapQuest papers back when, right? So there is that assumption. There's positive sides to it. There's probably negative sides in a very broader sense, not specific to any technology advance, but the fact that, the screens are everywhere, right? And there's a lot more self-regulation required. Yes, one more question. Yes! That's an awesome question. So the question was, there are limitations of any of these data products, right? So if you're a user, how do you, if you're a product person, how do you kind of give that training to users to say, okay, these are things the system's not capable of yet? The reason I said it's an awesome question is because it's an unsolved one, and it's really hard, and it's different across different products. So in Google search, for example, right? In fact, actually, we train the users to say, actually, you can type in anything. You don't have to learn a grammar and learn a way to use this tool. You can say there's a box. It's a very simple interface. Nobody has to learn anything, right? But the trade-off there is that the underlying system has to do a lot of work. That is, for whatever you type in, the onus is on the system to come back with a result. And so the complexity just shifts elsewhere. It moves under the hood. Versus some other products where the system, if the underlying system is not sophisticated enough, then you will have to have these crutches, right? You'll have to say, well, actually, here's what I'm good at, right? Here's the 10 things. So you see these constructs where you have a menu of restricted, like whitelist of things, right? So those are crutches where you can say, look, actually, if you'll fall off the cliff if you try anything outside of this. So we'll give this giant hint to you that these are the 10 things that the product is capable of.
Aparna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. One thing I want to mention, tomorrow it's Aparna's birthday. So I'm really glad that she made the time to come here, create this talk. I hope you enjoyed it. One question for you. How many of you have been here more than 3 times this year? A lot. How about just 5 times or more? Yeah. So we have this program. We love it when people come back. We have this program that we call Members That Count. And what it is if you come 5 times in the year, then we give you perks. We invite you to our holiday party. We give you a discount on future events and stuff like that. So you still have for September, October, November, 3 events, including this one. But yeah, we love that. We love that when people come back. So I encourage you to, take advantage of that. Our talk next month is a talk about how you advance your career as a product leader. Gib, do you want to stand up? Gib is going to be our speaker next month. He spoke here in February and was our biggest talk so far, with several hundreds of people on the wait list. So if you want to come to his talk next month, I encourage you to get your ticket now. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to do shout outs. And so if you have something that you want to share, either you're hiring, you're looking for a job, you want to promote something, looking for users, you're looking for investment, you're looking for anything, a room, please gather here. And we're going to do a quick shout outs. And people who do shout outs will get a book.
Hey everybody. My name is Andrew. I went from engineer to interactive designer to founder. I'm building a startup called Cupboard with a team of folks in San Diego. It's a device. I'm building a device that's able to track every single food item in your kitchen without you doing anything. And then it's able to use behavioral analysis to suggest things to you like meals and when you should buy more eggs and stuff like that. We just opened our seed round, so just looking for investors.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amin Kazimov. I'm from Switzerland and actually finishing my studies. I'm very good at data science and I'm looking for an internship here in Silicon Valley for 3 to 6 months. And if you have something about this, just talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vaibhav Nivargi, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Banner Technologies. We are a young, still stealth mode enterprise company using AI, machine learning, NLP, and to hopefully build a trustworthy product. We are still looking to build out our core engineering team. So if you're interested, come and talk to me and my co-founders. We are here. We're going to be based in Palo Alto, and we are well funded. So,
thank you.
Hi, my name is Ying Ying. I'm a UX designer looking for new opportunities. I'm in this field about 5 years. One of the interesting products I've been working on is an AI-empowered natural language processing base, which is a harder problem for a digital shopping assistant to help you to find your unique jackets or to find your unique products, which is currently being used by the North Face to find your perfect jacket and the 1-800 Flowers to find your perfect gift. And the other interesting product I've been working on is an online SaaS product customizer. It's also widely used by a variety of companies. Thank you. Yeah. If you're interested, I'm in this pink North Face jacket.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bernard. I'm a fresh graduate out of UCSD, and I studied computer science, and I actually focused on machine learning, so if anyone wants to hire me, I'm here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nadia Barbeau. I'm a product manager here in San Francisco. I just wanted to shout out for any female product managers out there. If you're not aware, there's an awesome Slack group called Women in Product. There's a few of us here that are from that group. So if you're looking for people to network with, other female product managers, please come over. We're in the back. Jessica, wave, will you? Yeah, and Nicole. Okay, thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name's Josh. For the last 5 years, I've been at Newton, which is using artificial intelligence and applying it to the field of education to teach students automatically through a variety of learning apps. So I launched Newton into Asia, grew our team from myself to now 16 people across 3 offices, and secured partnerships with a bunch of the top education companies there, representing about 10 million students. And now I've decided to move to the Bay Area, so I'm interested in business development, strategic partnerships, and international expansion roles, particularly at companies that, like Newton, are using artificial intelligence to disrupt old school industries. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana. I work for a company called LeanPlum. We have a product called that does mobile marketing automation. So if you work for a company using 1 or 2 vendors to do analytics or A/B testing or personalization, we do all of them. And we're hiring, and it's a really amazing place to work. So come talk to me, and yeah, don't be afraid to say hello.
I agree. LeanPlum is awesome. I work a lot with them. Great company.
Hi, everyone. I'm looking for writer user feedback. I'm a user experience designer and researcher at a 4-person startup called The Right Margin. And we are a goal-driven writing app that aims to help aspiring authors more successfully start and finish their writing projects. So if you guys could try us out, it's a free trial, no credit card or anything. It'd be great to get your feedback. And I also have some promo codes for products that count members, or attendees rather, for 1 month off. So if you're a writer, just try us out. No risk. Thanks.
And Christine's also an awesome designer. She viz notes some of our events sometimes, and they're great notes.
Thanks. I have 2 pitches, but SC, I only need 1 book. So first pitch is for the TrueBuds. They are the first stereo wireless Bluetooth earbuds, completely wireless, and they're awesome. You guys should check them out. I have business cards for that product. Second pitch, starting now. Thanks. I work for Amazon Music, and I run the royalties and reporting team. I'm looking for a software engineer, mid-level, possibly architect, and also a software development manager to help us scale. We're going to really improve the way we do royalties and reporting. Thanks.
Thank you. You actually get a book for the best shout out tonight, so come find me afterwards.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jiyoung. I just graduated from MBA Yale, and I moved here a month ago. I'm looking for new opportunities. I'm Korean, but I used to live and study and work in Japan, and I can speak Chinese. So if you're interested in business development and international expansion, please come to me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Two more things. One is you just received an email where we're asking you for feedback. So we take this super seriously. Every month, we ask you for feedback after the event. We actually measure the Net Promoter Score of our event, and this started because of Gib. Thank you. It's been fantastic. It's transformed a lot of things in the way we run our events. So please take a minute to fill that in. And then last thing, selfish plug. I recently joined an investment firm. We invest in companies that are based in the Bay Area, have already raised money, and preferably make a little bit of money. If you know a company or work at a company that fits these criteria, please come find me. And I'll be signing my books over there in the back. All right. Hope to see you next month. We have another 30 minutes of networking, and there's more beer and pizza in the back. At 9 o'clock, I have to kick everybody out so that we keep the app happy.